Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Sport NI's second webinar in our series of Thursday webinars, hosted by Oisín McConville. Oisín, as we all know, needs no introduction in Northern Irish or Irish terms. Oisín is regarded as one of the best all-time footballers in Ulster and in Ireland, and was part of 2002. Not three, which is what I said last week. Apologies to our own fans. Part of the winning 2002 Armagh team who lifted the Sam Maguire. Oisín, I am very sorry to have to say, also had 6 All-Ireland Senior Championships with Crossglen Rangers, and as a Silverbridge Harps woman, it doesn't give me any pleasure to actually say that. And Oisín has also 2 All-Star awards. Oisín is also a Wellbeing ambassador for Sport NI, and we feel very privileged and very proud to have him hosting our series tonight. Just in terms of housekeeping, can we make sure your mobile phone is turned off, and just to help with our broadband, if you can turn off your video and mute yourselves unless you want to talk. We have our chat facility at the bottom of your screen, so if you want to ask a question, Des and Oisín will be keeping an eye on the chat screen throughout the evening, and we'll get to your question if we possibly can. I'm going to hand over to Oisín in a minute to take us forward, but I just wanted to say on behalf of Sport Northern Ireland that wellbeing in sport is a critical area of our new corporate plan, of our strategy and our commitment, having a really strong sporting culture in Northern Ireland. We have brought forward a whole range of support, including the Sports Wellbeing Hub, which we launched a couple of weeks ago, and we want to bring forward some new support in the following week. So please keep an eye on Sport NI social media platforms to get more information on that. We also want to raise awareness next week as part of Mental Health Awareness Week, and we'll be doing a whole series of promotional work around that. So please stay tuned to that, and please enjoy tonight. Thanks a million for tuning in, and I'm going to hand you over to Oisín.
Thanks, Antoinette, and good evening, everybody. This is our second week now with the webinar. I think last week we were very focused on not just team sport, but in particular, I suppose, football in general. And this week we're going to try and broaden it out, and we're delighted to have 2 very special guests. This is the only notes I have for tonight, is just to introduce both Caroline O'Hanlon, Armagh ladies captain, Northern Ireland netball star, 3 times All-Star, and 2014 Senior Player of the Year. There's a load more stuff, Caroline, but that's going to have to do you for now. Carl Frampton, Northern Ireland's only two-weight world champion, 29 fights, 27 wins, 15 by KO. Nicknamed the Jackal. Caroline, I'm gonna start with you. I don't know if you have a nickname or not. If you have, you can share that with us. But otherwise, I wanted to kick off tonight by talking about the culture in ladies team sport. Last week we talked a little bit about what we used, or what Tony Adams and David Jeffrey would use in the change room, as in, a lot of men's teams go about, the siege mentality and what the media have said about it, an individual or a team. What's the approach in a ladies change room, and does it differ largely from that?
I suppose, like, I've been involved obviously in a lot of teams, and I feel that the culture is very different in each of those teams. I'm sure, well, I don't know how you felt about when you went from Cross to Armagh, but certainly even within the club setup, there's a different mentality than in the county setup. And in terms of there's quite a contrast between netball and Gaelic. Obviously, I'm playing over the water in Manchester, and I suppose that's the culture within that club is it's a very professional setup. You are there as an employee, while it's semi-pro, it's not like fully professional. You still feel like you're there to do a role, and you know, because you're paid, you know, you have to maintain a certain level. I suppose it was a club with a winning culture. Whenever I went into it, they hadn't won in a while, but certainly there was an expectation within the group that, you know, every time you went out to win. And it's funny having been in lots of different teams, I suppose, and whenever teams are not used to winning, while they may have the personnel and the qualities and the skills to win, you know, that attitude and that expectation gets you over the line in an awful lot of matches, even if the opposition maybe isn't as strong as your squad. So it was quite interesting to go into a team that was used to winning all the time in terms of netball, because I'd come from another franchise that hadn't, you know, weren't there or competing at the high level.
And just give us an indication of the sort of differences between the netball and the Gaelic. Not so much the amateur semi-pro stuff, but aggression, that sort of type of thing.
Yeah, I suppose there's a myth around netball that it's non-contact sport, but I think that anybody that's been at netball matches, certainly at international level or at Super League level in England, you know that it's certainly not a non-contact sport. It's very physical, and you know, there's a lot of physicality involved, and there's a lot of weight put on to strength and conditioning and physical fitness. You're allowed to contest the ball, and you know that's expected. It's played on a very small court relative to a Gaelic pitch, so you're much tighter to each other. So there is a lot of, you know, body on body in order to compete for space and compete for the ball. I suppose that's probably the one thing that's people, you know, misinterpret, I suppose, in terms of netball.
Caroline, the whole thing about teams and support networks and all that sort of thing, is that easier with Armagh? Because I mean, that's something you grew up with. You know, your captain, you know, obviously highly respected, and you're going from that into netball, where maybe you might not know a lot of the girls and different things like that. So, can you give us a bit of an insight into the difference in that?
Do you mean just in terms of the lockdown now that we're?
No, just in general. When you made that switch and when you went to England and started to play, I mean, was that difficult? Is the same supports there that are there at Gaelic football? Because I know probably a lot of the girls you play with Armagh are probably a lot of your friends on a club level or people you know for years, and the netball may be slightly different.
Yeah, I suppose you take a lot of it for granted in terms of Gaelic, because, as you said, a lot of them are in your community, they're friends. You know, it's natural to look to them for support or for them to offer it, or to realise whenever you maybe are going through a difficult time that they would identify that and be able to sort of offer support. In terms of netball, yeah, especially for myself, coming from, you know, from here and traveling over and maybe not being at all the training sessions, you know, flying in and flying out, trying to build up that relationship was a challenge. I suppose you had to put yourself out of that comfort zone and actually be proactive in you know, your communication, keeping in touch in the WhatsApp group. I know lots of teams have WhatsApp groups, and sometimes it's easy to be very quiet in those groups. And I think particularly for netball, it was important that, you know, I was sort of, you know, forward in terms of that, and, you know, interactive in the group, because I had to get to know them and I had to sort of find out what was going on when I wasn't there, and, you know, just be a part of it. So yeah, it was different, and you definitely have to make more of an effort, you know.
Brilliant, Caroline. Carol, just the switch to you. Last week we had a lot of inquiries about individual sport, and the three people that were there last week, I suppose I would say we were unqualified to answer the questions. Give us an idea about the pressures that's on an amateur athlete, not just an amateur athlete, but I suppose with you, boxing is putting bread on the table, and does that bring an extra layer of pressure?
Yeah, I think because it's kind of, it's a one-man sport, really. You're in there, when the bell goes, you're on your own, and you have an unbelievable amount of pressure. I think there's got to be, and I don't want to be disrespectful to anyone in team sports, but there's got to be more pressure on the individual, because he has to win, and if there's any mistakes, he gets the blame, and it's all on him. I've just had my little son walk in the room here, just in case he puts me off here, by the way. But there's obviously a lot of pressure on individual sportsmen. But again, talking about the team aspect of it as well, you are a team. So you've your nutritionist, you have a trainer, number 1 and number 2. You've got a cut man, you've got a strength and conditioning coach, and he's playing the guitar now. He's trying to put me off. But it's very, very high pressurized, and I think that especially in the pro game, when there's TV cameras there, the press that you get, everything is just really on top of you, and it's almost like a pressure cooker at times.
Give us an idea of the support network that's around you, like number 1, number 2. What are all these people offering you, or like, I've always found that whenever you're winning, you'll always have people around you. It's when things are not going so well that's when you need these people.
Yeah, look, you need, and it's more. Hold on 1 second. Right, go out and watch the TV a minute. Right, there you are. Say hello. Right, go on, slide on. Go on out, and win 1 second. It's a disaster. Sorry about this. His mommy just went out to the shop. So, will you go away? Right. Oisín, you're going to have to ask me that question again, because I completely forgot that you put me off.
No, I'm just saying about, you're talking about, that yes, you're on your own when you're in the ring, but you do have a lot of people around you. How important are those people? And
right.
A lot of what are these people doing? They're probably not at every single training session. So, I mean, when do you draw on them? When do you need them? And what are they doing for you?
There's a large amount of people that you rely on to get through a training camp, and that's not just your team at hand, where it's your trainers and nutritionists and people around you in the camp. But when I go away, I go to Manchester for my camp, so I'm constantly in touch with people at home as well, and sometimes you just need a wee bit of reassurance from people. You need to pick up a phone, speak to your parents, speak to my wife a lot. It gets to the point where I probably speak to her too much, where it's almost annoying for her when she's at home with 2 kids and I'm pestering her with my problems. But I think as a sportsman, a sports person, you need to be able to rely on not just your close-knit team and as your trainers, but your family and friends as well.
I'll just cut to it because it was actually my last question, but I'll come to you on this, Caroline, as well. Defeat. You went so long undefeated, and then how did that defeat affect you? So losing, how did that affect you? And is that when you needed those people who are around you, or at that stage did you not want to see them?
I think that when I've lost twice in my career, and both defeats hit me pretty hard, if I'm being honest. I wouldn't say I was depressed after the fights, but I was certainly very down. And it took kind of the first defeat, the Leo Santa Cruz in particular. Like, I was down, I was doing things I shouldn't have been doing after it. I was hitting the drink, and my phone kind of stopped ringing. It didn't ring like it always had before, and there was people who were normally calling me maybe 4 or 5 times a week had just suddenly stopped calling. And you're like, you hear these stories, but until it really happens to you, you don't feel it. And I felt that, and I almost felt a wee bit isolated. And I have to credit my wife a lot for pulling me out of a bit of a hole. And I can see how people, not saying that I was depressed, but I could see how people can fall into that kind of downward spiral. If they're on their own, they don't have the right people around them. But it was very, very difficult to get over that. And time's a great healer, and when you kind of come around and you think about it rationally, I lost a fight, a close fight, to a very, very good fighter. I beat him in a fight previous to it, and both were close fights. It's just like it happens at the very high level of sport. You win some and you lose some, and unfortunately for me, I lost a couple of times. But you just have to be able to get on with it. But I think you certainly need the help of your family to get through them moments.
Carl, you've only lost twice. Did you learn from that first defeat when the second one came?
They were different completely, because I think that the second fight that I lost the fight to Josh Warrington just before Christmas. I expected to win the fight. Like it's a fight that still annoys me, because I feel like I really underperformed and I kind of took him for granted. I went into the fight thinking that I knew it was going to be physical, and he was a very good fighter, but his record doesn't really suggest he's a puncher. And I went in there thinking, this guy can't hurt me, because I've been hit and been in with big men before, and I haven't, really been hurt that bad. But Warrington hurt me worse than I've ever been hurt in the ring, and that was a mistake that I made. But it took me. It was a completely different feeling after. I think because the fight was so close to Christmas. I think it was the 22nd of December, something like that. I couldn't be down in the dumps and come home with my two kids getting ready for Santa coming. You know what I mean? So that kind of pulled me out of it, and the time of the year I just had to pull out of it.
So is it fair to say the first one hurt you mentally, the second one more physically?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very fair to say. Yeah, it took a fair bit to get over the first loss to Leo Santa Cruz.
Caroline, defeat, is it much different when you've got a team around you? And who do you draw on in the case of defeats? Because unfortunate thing is, when you play team sport, I mean, I'm after talking to Carl about 2 defeats in his professional career.
12
with a lot more with yeah, I concur. But with a lot more games now coming thick and fast, how do Caroline O'Hanlon deal with defeat?
I suppose just drawing on what Carl had said about pressures. I suppose in team sport there's very different type of pressure, because while the pressure and the buck all stops with Carl, you as a person can do all the preparation that you need to for a match, but you're fully reliant on everyone else. So that can be a frustrating thing, and a different type of pressure. It can consume you to worry about different things that are out of your control, and that can be very difficult to deal with. And equally, if you have a poor performance and the team loses, you've let the whole team down. So it's not just that if you don't perform well and you lose, you can cope with that to an extent, but having that feeling of maybe losing a match, missing a free kick that's cost the game, and letting the whole team, 30, 40 people that are involved in the team down, it's a different type of pressure, and it's not to be underestimated either. Defeat is difficult. I suppose for me, having such a busy schedule is helpful. A lot of the time my seasons roll into each other, so there's very little time to dwell on it in between. And same if there's successes, the season runs into the next one, and I suppose I haven't spent a lot of time even reflecting on things that have been positive or negative. But yeah, so it's good if it's a defeat that if I lose in football, I just go and play netball, and everything's grand, nobody even mentions it, just move swiftly on.
Yeah, and are you somebody who spends the evening after the match going through it, or analysing it, or being on your own, or are you with teammates, or what way does that go?
I will, spend a lot of time thinking about it. I will, and analyse, my own performance, watch videos of the game, and just I will spend a lot of time sort of dissecting my own performance. Although, like, if the team's going out, like, I'll go out with the team and have the crack, but the next day I'll be thinking about it. It's not that I just brush it away like I do. I do take a lot of it on board.
Caroline, just to go on to your job, right? Obviously, you're GP now in Uri, okay? There's obviously huge pressures with that job, not just now, but in day-to-day life. How does that compare with the pressure during games, and are those skills transferable?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I feel that in both environments, you know, you learn to deal with pressure situations, because both in work and, you know, in high intensity sport, you know, you have to be able to think clearly and control your emotions and control, you know, your physical feelings and make decisions clearly. So yeah, both environments have been really helpful for that. And even just being part of a team, you know, I feel like, you know, it has helped me massively whenever I go to work and you see people who've never worked with, or have never been in a team, or have, you know, never worked with people, you know, the communication skills, you know, that empathy that you have, and, you know, looking out for each other and appreciating everybody's role within it, and all the buzzwords that we use, you know, those are vital, like, in reality. So yeah, no, I think there's been loads of crossover, and just, yeah, work is pressurized, and lots of people have pressurized jobs, and I think in amateur sport it's really important to have an outlet like sport. And, you know, it's great whenever I go to football, because it is at a high level, or netball or whatever, you have to be fully engaged in it when you're there, so you have to park everything that has happened that day in work. There's no dwelling on it. I've often felt, you know, or wondered how other people have coped when they've gone home from a really, you know, difficult day in work, or when something has happened, and sat there and, you know, watched television. Like, I'm sure they must have been out of their minds, you know. Whereas I've been really thankful that I've had the opportunity to play a sport and have that complete break away. People think that it's, you know, you're going from intensity and intensity, and that you know, you're going to burn out and you're tired and all that. But actually, it's refreshing, you know. And after you've gone to training, do you know what? You feel so much better physically and mentally to have had that, you know, just a complete break from things.
And that sort of mental strength, Caroline, is that something now which it's almost autopilot with you, or is it something that you think about on the way to training, on the way home from training, on the way to work, on the way home from work, during the day? Is it, as I say, is it something that at this stage, because you've experienced it all as a sports person, is it something that almost comes natural now to, you know, that mental strength and dealing with these things?
Like, don't get me wrong, you know, you're still going to have times that things are very difficult and struggle with, you know, certain aspects of, you know, work, or hard days, or equally, if you're not performing well at your sport, it certainly can affect your mood and, you know, day to day. But I do think, yeah, I think I've developed skills certainly over time that I wouldn't spend a lot of time sort of thinking about it day to day, and going, you know, transitioning from work to sport has become sort of a habit. And I can more, you know, switch mindset quite quickly.
And is there anything you could share with us, just even 1-2 small little snippets, you know, skills in order to deal with those things, or
in terms of
coping mechanisms?
I suppose when, you know, initially when I was starting out, I suppose it's utilising the support that's around you. You know, Carl had mentioned about the team that's around him, and, you know, we're lucky in team sport we have an even bigger team, because obviously you have your teammates as well as those mentors. But utilising those, because quite often a lot of people in your team are going through similar difficulties. It might not be exactly the same, it might not be the same job, it might not be, you know, exactly the same issues at home. But there's usually somebody who's having a tough time. So using the people that are around you, and, you know, I suppose just opening up with your teammates, and having, I think the most useful thing for me, I suppose, from even going over to like playing England and stuff, because it was difficult. You're going into a new environment where I had to prove myself. You know, I was coming into their environment, and, you know, they were established, and, you know, I was this, you know, somebody coming over from Ireland, half of them didn't know who I was, you know, and you had to prove yourself, and it can affect your confidence whenever you're used to being assured, I suppose, of your position and your role within the team to them being the outsider. So having someone, whether it be a family member or a friend or a partner or a coach that you trust and that you I suppose communicate with, you know, to have that reassurance, I suppose.
Brilliant, Caroline. Thank you, Carl. Not to scare you, Carl, but there's a guy on here who wants to ask you a question, and his name's Paddy Barnes. Do you want to field the question, or will I ignore him?
Go on. Let's see what he has to say. I'm sure it'll be a good one.
Guys, as well, I just want to acknowledge before Paddy comes in there. I just want to acknowledge, obviously, the NHS at 8 p.m. We'll all be given a round of applause. You mightn't be able to hear us, but we'll all be given a round of applause at 8 p.m. for the brilliant work that they're doing. But Paddy, over to you.
Yeah, I actually had two questions. One for Caroline, but thankfully you asked it. It was about the pressure for work and sport, but now I know about it. But I've actually about Carl. I want to know. I have a wrote down here, so I'm gonna read it out. Do you feel pressure, or did you feel more pressure in your early career? If you didn't succeed, where it would put you in life? What I mean is, at the highest level all your adult life, you had time for education to put something in place to fall back on if you didn't make it. Did this like the pressure of thinking about there affect you?
I think it affects me, but I think it's something that you can use to your advantage. Like I've some of the I think probably for me the highest pressurized situation I was in was when I fought Kiko Martinez for the world title. And a couple of reasons for that answer, because I'd already beaten Kiko in a European title fight, so people just expect you to show up and you beat him again. But I remember the first fight, and I remember it being a very difficult fight, and I was pushed very hard in that fight. There was a temporary stadium built down the Titanic Slipway. It was all the papers were talking about in the lead up to the fight. There was, 16,000 people there expecting me to win. There was no doubt in their minds that I was winning this fight and becoming world champion because I'd already beaten them. So that was a very, very high pressurized situation, but I used it to my advantage. I feel like I was really switched on from start to finish, as you should be in all fights. But I feel like that fight in particular was one of my best performances over my career, and how easy I actually made what could have been a very difficult.
Did it ever cross your mind, like in your 9th fight, I think it was, or maybe your 12th fight for the European title, if you lost that fight, where you would be in life?
Well, yeah, I haven't really reflected back and thought about that, but I think that's then when you're in them moments. The fight against Kiko Martinez for the European title, it was a tough fight, and there's guys who would have maybe taken a knee or maybe sat down the stool at the end of a round and not come out again because it was tough. And without being too vulgar, like I went back to the change room and was pissing blood off that fight. That was a pretty brutal fight for me. So I think, but that's the making of a top quality sportsman and a champion, really, is getting through them, really, through that adversity, like people do in so many different sports, and rather than someone who gets a little bit tough and takes the easy way out.
Yeah.
And I knew after that fight that you always have kind of doubts whether the dream is to be a world champion, and you always have doubts. But after the European title fight against Kiko Martinez, I knew that I had the mentality to become a world champion. I'm just going to go into a different room and get a charger here, by the way, because my phone's nearly dead.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Paddy. Caroline, I'm just gonna switch over to you. It's just a question from the floor. How about maintaining motivation during isolation? Any advice?
Yeah, that's been difficult, I suppose. For me personally, I suppose in the early weeks, work was really intense, and there was obviously in the community, but also in work, there was a lot of anxiety about, you know, what was going to happen. You know, where the reports were coming through from Italy, you know, there was this fear that things were going to be overwhelming. So for me, sport very much took a back seat. You know, I was very much worried about, you know, immediate health in my family. You know, and so sport took a back seat. After that, I suppose once things kind of settled down, I tried to get back into a routine. But I suppose it was difficult. And what I found useful in later times is with some of the teams I've been involved with, we've had like competitions. But it is hard as if you're used to, first of all, training with teammates. It's a massive adjustment to training on your own, and doing particularly like endurance or speed endurance work is very difficult when you're used to, you know, nearly racing people. You know, Carl's probably much more used to training on his own, and you know, it's probably not a massive adjustment that it would be in team sport. So, and even just having something on the horizon, you know, we're always used to having a goal to train towards. So it has been difficult to not have that. So I have found it useful whenever, you know, with some of the teams I've been involved in, having this competition type aspect to it. So we are having like a lockdown cup with Thunder. So we're in teams, and there's different challenges every day or every couple of days. So they're a bit of fitness challenges, but there's also a bit of crack. So, you know, like make a video on something, and the fastest person or the best video, you know, gets points for their team. And you know, it's a bit of crack. It keeps the group connected, and you know, we work better in competition because that's what we're used to doing. So that has been very useful for me.
Carl, are you back with us?
I'm having an absolute disaster tonight.
No, you're doing well. This shows you coping in adversity.
Yeah.
Just the same question. You know, what's the keys for you? I mean, you probably feel as if you're in lockdown a lot of the time, because you know it's all for self-motivation with you. But if you're just looking for that extra little bit of motivation for people who are trying to train through the pandemic, uncertainty, you don't know when you're going to box again. Caroline doesn't know whether she's going to play, when she's going to play again, and so any advice on training through the lockdown?
Yeah, well, I think that the way I'm looking at it is we're all sports people all over the world are in the same boat, really. So it's not individual to me that I can't get ready for a fight like I'd like to, because the whole world's in the same situation. So I'm kind of lucky enough that I've got a wee bit of a gym set up in my garage, and I have a facility what I can use. There's other people that don't have that opportunity. They don't have the space to be able to train properly. But I've been kind of using this just to take over, really, and get ready for when sport eventually does come. The thing with boxing is that normally, me personally, being a fighter, I like a 12-week training camp. Some people like 8 weeks, some people like 10 weeks, but I like a long one of 12 weeks. So I'm guessing that whenever we do kind of get the green light to get back into fighting again, I don't think I'll have the opportunity of a 12-week camp. So what I'm doing now is kind of training a little bit with a little bit more intensity now than I would normally in between fights.
And one of the things that I found was that, yeah, I would go to a training session a lot of times. I'm motivated. I'm hydrated. I've eaten properly. All those sort of things. It's the nights when I wasn't that's when I drew on teammates the most. You know, as in to drive you on. Nobody has that anymore. But in your case, is that something you've been used to anyway?
Well,
being an
not
individual
really,
sports person?
It is an individual sport, but again, Caroline touched on it earlier. Even though I am, you know, I'm a boxer and I fight on my own, but the teammates that I have around me in the gym, like this, I've linked up now with my new training team for about almost 3 years now, and it's been the best decision I've ever made in terms of mentally for me. Like, I wasn't enjoying boxing. I was always counting down the days till I could finally retire from the sport that I've done my whole life. But now I've got a completely new outlook on it, and I actually enjoy it. So I use my training. It's almost like we train together, we don't fight each other, but there's a real level of competition there, which helps us go to the next level as well, because you always want to, even though you're not competing really against each other in terms of a fight, you want to do better on them in the circuits, on the track, in the pool, in the weight room. So we use that to kind of for extra motivation.
Carl, we both write for the same newspaper, and I remember being at your fight in the Titanic Quarter, and I didn't write. It was probably the first time I didn't write about Gaelic football. I wrote about being at that fight, and there was something different about that fight. Everybody just seemed to get together. There didn't seem to be any undercurrent. Everybody was there. They were cheering for you. Didn't matter what community you came from, what religion they were. It didn't seem to matter. There was a certain sense I felt that night that sport had changed something. Even if it was only for that hour and a half, the sport had changed something. Are you aware of that stuff, or is that just a byproduct of what you're doing?
Well, I'm aware of it, and I'm very, very grateful of the support that I get from both sections of the community here and all of Ireland, and also in the mainland UK as well. It's something that I never really imagined when I turned professional, that I would have the support that I got, but I've been very grateful. But I'm aware of it, but it's not as if I'm not a different person. Like, I'm not doing something that if I was working on a building site or doing any other job, like, I would still be the same person. And I think people here in Northern Ireland, they like that, and they like someone who doesn't get above their station. And I think that's probably the real reason why I have this support, because a lot of people just feel like they know me, I think, because they see me all over the place. I'm walking about the town and I'm in the shops, and I'm pretty sure most people in the country have seen me at some point. But the support I get is massive. I'm definitely aware of it, but I'm very, very grateful.
Caroline, same question. You carried the flag in the Commonwealth Games, I think, 2018. Did you feel as if there was that was from, considering where you're from, you're not that far from me, was that part of a coming together, and was sport breaking down some barriers in that regard?
Yeah, I suppose retrospectively, I've been asked about this quite often, and I've looked at it, I suppose, now. At the time when I was asked or approached about it, my overwhelming feeling was pride that I was even nominated or considered for doing it, to lead the team out at the Commonwealth Games. The caliber of athletes that were involved in the team across the different sports, for me to be selected was just a massive honour. And I've played for Northern Ireland since I was 15 or so. So I feel like it's a part of me, and while whatever beliefs I have outside that, I'm very proud of where I come from, and that I represent Northern Ireland across the world. And like Carl said, it's not like we're going out to be these political representatives. I just want to play sport to the best of my ability, and hope that I represent my community and that people support that.
Yeah, interesting. The same as watching The Last Dance, we'll see the pressure that Michael Jordan come under to endorse a certain candidate, and he said that that wasn't what he was about, but there was a lot of good things coming from what he was doing on a basketball court, and I think the same goes for you two guys. So thanks for that. Let's get on to the. So Caroline, for you, before you go out onto the court, before you go out onto the pitch, the pressure, how are you dealing with the pressure in the change rooms? Or are you somebody who I played with guys who punched walls, I played with guys who got sick before games, and I played with two guys in particular who slept right up until literally we were walking out onto the pitch. So there's lots of different personalities, there's lots of different ways of approaching it, but is there any advice on that, just before you go out onto the pitch?
literally in the change rooms, I just like to be nice and relaxed. I like to have a bit of crack, a bit of laugh with the rest of the team. I like if there's music on and that there's just a relaxed atmosphere. I hate whenever, like, you know, you're overwhelmed with tactics and chat before, like in the change room, literally before you're about to go out, you know, because I feel like that's, you know, I'm ready to go and then there's a whole load of information. You know, I like to have the preparation done and all that chat done at least, you know, the last training session, and then the day of the match, it's very much like, look, you've got this, everything's up there, you know, confidence, and, you know, look, we're ready and we're just going to, you know, work hard and, you know, just be positive and sort of have a bit of a relaxed atmosphere at that stage.
Carl, same question. Just before you go into the ring, maybe you're playing the guitar or something, but just before you go into the ring, you know, what's the tips that you would give people?
I like to have people around me. So, again, like what you were saying, there's guys who like to be on their own. There's guys who like to get psyched up by punching walls. There's guys who like to have their ego massaged, and there's different. I think that's the importance of a coach, to understand the individual and to know how to deal with them. But I like to have people around me. On a fight day, for example, I would go for a walk with my team. I would, if I don't see my kids, I would give them a call, certainly, and speak to them. If I can do it possibly, I like to have a meal, like my last meal with my wife. I've done that loads of times. And then in the changing rooms, it's really relaxed, and people that have been in my change rooms comment on how relaxed it is. And I suppose it probably just differs from other changing rooms where people are getting psyched out differently. But I like to listen to like nice, like Motown, chilled out music. And like Caroline says as well, it's important not to go over the top with instructions. I think that if you get a couple of instructions and things that you know may come up or may arise in the fight, I think that's important. But to have to be bombarded with stuff is ridiculous. I think anyway, personally. So I'd be relaxed and chilled out as much as possible, and then it's kind of really when I'm standing on the ramp about to walk to the ring, that's when I get focused, and that's when I really switch on.
Carl, give us a standout moment for you. It doesn't have to be a win, doesn't have to be, obviously it's not going to be a loss, but it doesn't have to be a win. It doesn't necessarily have to be anything that we would know, but a standout moment in your boxing career.
Well, there's been a lot. I've had a lot of good moments. I think the standout moment in my career has to be when I beat, we've talked about already, when I beat Leo Santa Cruz in New York, because I just jumped up a division. So it was my first fight in a new division. I wasn't expected to win the fight. I think there was 35 American boxing journalists asked who's going to win the fight, and I think 33 picked Leo. And I think the two that picked me probably had some sort of Irish blood in them, and they didn't really mean it. But that moment for me was, you know, I became a two-weight world champion. I created history, the only ever dollar Irishman to ever do it, and along with Steve Collins and Katie Taylor, the only ever person in Ireland to do it. So a very proud moment for me, and it was just real. If you watch how I reacted after that fight, it's just real, like pure ecstasy and joy. That was easily the best moment in my career.
Caroline, give us a standout moment from either netball or Gaelic football or both.
I suppose for netball, I'd say the Commonwealth Games in Australia in 2018 was a standout moment. Just I was captain of the Northern Ireland team for that tournament, and you know, the opening match against Australia, while the result was far from pretty for us, just leading the team out into what is essentially the home of netball, to a full house, and just, you know, taking in that atmosphere and how far we've come as a team to be on that stage, was just phenomenal. And then I suppose for Gaelic, I'd say I think winning the first senior championship with my club, Carrickruppen. It was again about you know, obviously you have wins and losses, and that's not necessarily how you measure success, but it was the progression that we've had. The year before, we as a club, it seemed like we were never going to win. You know, we were never going to get over that hurdle of beating Clonard, our rival club. And we got a new manager in, and he just changed the mindset in the club. You know, he just, without him, Mickey Heaney, I think you know him, Oisín, and he just changed the mindset of the club, and for us to get over the line and win that, and then suddenly it didn't matter what players we had, what team we had, every year we were going and we had as much pride as anybody else to win that, you know, and it just completely was just a changing moment within the club, and you know, I was just very proud of being part of that and seeing how that mindset could be changed by even just one person coming in.
Caroline, just on, I'm going to go on to one of the questions from the floor, but just interesting on that mindset change. When somebody comes in and they change the mindset like that, are you going around to players making sure that everybody's minds changed? Because again, you know what it's like in a change room, and there's so many different personalities, people have different things going on in their lives. Are you going around checking, making sure everybody's sensing or picking up the same thing as you're picking up?
I think that's probably impossible to do, but I suppose you just have to hope that that everybody's there and everybody's buying into the I suppose the goal, and I suppose we wanted to win, and you know, that's not enough. It's, I suppose he came in, and what he did was he changed our focus. So our focus wasn't necessarily on the opposition, our focus was on ourselves and on improving and on things that we could control. And it sounds obvious, but actually when you take someone from outside the club in and they highlight, you know, other positive things and strengths that you have, you know, people want to buy into that because it's actually positive things. And I think it's easier to shift people's mindset when you know, focus on those things that they can actually see a change in and that they can control, rather than, you know, that's not helpful. But whereas focus on positive things that, you know,
Caroline, you're just breaking up a little bit. Carl, I'll just bring you back in until that issue sorted there with Caroline. How much focus is on you when Caroline talks about the opposition? How much focus for you is on the person you're fighting against, and how much is on you in the lead up to a fight?
I think it's probably a good mix of both. You certainly have to focus on what your opponent can do and his strengths, but also his weaknesses and things that you can exploit. I suppose that's the same in any sport. But I'm not a person who likes to watch like too much footage of opponents. I do watch a bit. I think it would be naive not to watch any, but I would watch a little bit. Normally at the start of a camp and at the end of a camp, getting close to the fight. But I'm not like, you know, constantly on it. I think there's people who, you know, go a wee bit over the top with that, and so much so that they lose focus and they're focused too much. Like they lose sleep because they're constantly thinking about this opponent. But I go into a long camp and I have a game plan, obviously, but I focus on myself. I believe like if I perform to my best ability, I can still beat anyone in the featherweight or super featherweight division. But again, it would be naive not to look at the opponent's strengths and weaknesses too.
Okay, just a question from the floor. Chris, hockey coach, any advice on how to work with young people through non-selection or rejection at a young age or dealing with setbacks?
Oh, I think it's difficult, isn't it? I've got a young kid myself who loves sport and wants to get involved in all sport, and I think you have to tread the line very, very carefully as to how you deal with little setbacks that she has. And I think that sport at a young age, it just has to be fun, and make sure you keep it fun. And as long as they're enjoying it while they're learning, I think that's the best of both worlds. When I was a kid, and some of the things that were said to me as a young boxer, when I lost a fight or maybe didn't perform how I should have, probably wouldn't be allowed to be said these days. But I think it's very, very important just to make things fun for people. And people lose, people win sometimes as well, but most people lose. And I think it's about coming back from the defeats that makes a true champion. Paddy Barnes, who's on this call at the minute, the best example of that of all time, 3-time Olympian, is one of the best ever amateur boxers from Ireland, and he lost. I don't know, there's different reports, but some say his first 15 fights, some say his first 10. I don't know what it was, but he lost a number of fights at the start where other kids would have given up. But Paddy went on to become one of the greatest ever Olympians that the country's ever produced.
That might get him into the #1 slot this weekend, but we'll have to wait and see. Carl, just on again, the couple of fights that I was at, Titanic, Windsor Park, huge crowds. When you see that huge crowd, are you feeding off it, Carl, or are you trying to block some of it out?
No, I feel like I feed off it, and I've spoke about this before, and I think that at home certainly the noise in the arenas when I fight, it's amazing, and you can use that to your own strength really, and I think that with the atmosphere created at my fights, especially at home, there's probably a little bit added to my game, like just a little bit more spite or something. I don't know what it is. I remember I fought an American called Chris Avalos, who I didn't really like, and the people of Belfast didn't like him because he was very arrogant when he came over to the press conferences and the weigh-in and stuff. And I wanted to win that fight so badly, and I heard him, and he was kind of wobbling, standing in front of me, and the noise of the crowd like kind of just went right through me. They were like, just that helped me get rid of him. I think they just kind of picked everything up. The noise in the arena was insane that night, and I used that to my ability just to go and completely get rid of the guy. So yeah, I listen to the atmosphere and I use it.
Thanks, Carl. Good question. Caroline, you're back with us, yeah? Caroline, you back with us?
Yeah.
Right, brilliant. Caroline, a brilliant question, Justin. Not actually Martin, I think it's from. On The Last Dance, maybe you're not watching that, are you?
I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, well, you're too busy. One of the issues that Michael Jordan has when he switches over to baseball, he's in a certain shape and he gets himself into it and he's training to be a baseball player, and then he comes back and he realizes his body's not fit for it's not basketball fit was the term that he used. Is there any of that with you as far as Gaelic football and netball is concerned?
Not really, because the two sports are quite similar in terms of you need a lot of cardiovascular endurance and like speed and agility. So I find that the trainer complements both. I suppose a little bit whenever you come into football season, obviously you're doing longer distance running, but I never felt that it was a problem. I always felt that the two sports helped each other. I suppose the only difficulty would be whenever they're overlapping. So say like during like National League for football, where I'm at, like that's my peak netball season, and then you go to football and they're doing long slugs, that sort of, and I didn't find that was helpful for me. That was almost fatiguing me, whereas I wanted to be sharp and fast and explosive. So doing some of those really heavy long runs wasn't particularly helpful. Yeah, that's been the only issue really.
Caroline, you might have answered this question in some regard already, but what type of coach gets the best out of you?
I've had lots of different coaches. I find that like that in itself was very helpful, because I think that you can learn from every coach, and it's important, I suppose, to be receptive to that. I think that, you know, sometimes I've been in situations where you've had coaches who maybe have less experience than I've had, or, you know, maybe haven't been in situations where I've probably have more experience. But I think it's important still to listen to them, because they can actually have a different approach and a different outlook on things, and you can still learn from that. I suppose Mickey Heaney is probably one of the best Gaelic coaches that I've ever had the experience of, because of his approach. He, as I say, you probably know Mickey as well, but he's a very eccentric character, and that, you know, it was so refreshing, and his mindset was, you know, was crucial, as I said, to getting Carrick success. But I suppose his approach to training and simplifying training, he how do I describe it? I suppose he focused a lot on basics and execution of basics. And for us, that was really important, because it gave you great confidence that you know, if you can do all those, everything else is a bonus. And he was a very good coach for the team, because while, you know, obviously there were county players in our club team, and so that naturally they're the central players, and a lot of focus goes through them. But what he did, which was very different, was he shifted us around. So, like, I've always midfield for the club, and, you know, they kick the ball out to me, that's what we're going to do. But he put me in full forward, so the opposition automatically then had to shift their focus back to defence, and our other players then, you know, took some of the strain, and, you know, carried the ball and had more confidence in doing that. And suddenly the opposition had a lot more things to think about. And so if they put their focus on me in full forward, you know, the people out the field had a lot more space to work with, and, you know what, caused a lot more problems, because they were confident in doing that, because he gave them that confidence. And also took pressure off me as one of our, you know, more experienced players, because I had to trust those players to be able to do that, and learn to do that, and that was crucial to us winning those games.
Brilliant, Caroline, thanks. Carl, same question. Obviously you had a lot of different coaches through your amateur boxing career, so what sort of coach gets the best out of Carl Frampton?
So, someone that knows me really, and knows the things that I need. And I think because it's an individual sport, again, that you have to treat the best coach is someone who can really manage people well, and know the guy who needs a softly approach, or he knows someone who needs when they need to kick up the backside or whatever. The two biggest influences on my career and life probably are, well, three of them. A guy called Billy McKee, my old amateur coach, who taught me so much, not just about boxing, but just about life and how to be responsible. My other coach as an amateur, a guy called Cooper McClure as well, who would still help me out from time to time. They've been huge influences on my life. Jamie Moore, who I've teamed up with now as well, has been massive for my career, and just my mindset and my mentality, and making me believe that I can do it, and I can still get to the very top. There was a time there just after I'd lost to Leo Santa Cruz. You know, I'd beat him a fight before, then I lost to him, and suddenly I made to feel like I'm on a scrap heap, and my career's over. So I think teaming up with Jamie and the boys, they really had the right approach, and they helped me get over that, and also make me believe that I can get to the very, very top again.
Carl, that's an interesting one on Billy McKee, because he wasn't just coaching you to be a boxer. You were taking stuff and bringing it into your life, your everyday life as well.
Yeah, but I talk about it, and I talk about boxing because I know boxing. But I suppose it's the same with all sports clubs all over the country. You know, a lot of these people in the amateur setups are most of them are all volunteers. They don't make a penny out of it, and most of them actually lose money trying to look after kids and provide for their clubs and take them about and travel to different events and what have you. But they're almost like non-qualified counsellors, these people, because they get so many different people coming through their doors that they have to deal with, and they have to be able to manage and put them on the right path. And Billy McKee is someone who's always talked about what he wants from his young boxers is, rather than success in the ring, is if they're good people when they leave the club and they grow up and they get a good job or whatever, they have a family and they have good morals about them. And I think that's a real important thing for him. He instills discipline in you from a very early age. But I've never respected a man in my life as much as I respect Billy McKee. And I still feel like that.
Brilliant, guys. This question is to both of you. Maybe start with you, Caroline. And we covered it in a way, but I want to go back over it again. So I'm in lockdown with the wife, 3 kids, and myself and the 2 boys play a lot of football. So one's 5, one's 7. We play against each other every day. For the first 5 weeks, maybe 6 weeks, I let them win every day, even 10-9. I think I let them beat me 10-5 one day as well. But I let them beat me every day, and all of a sudden, I come on here last week, and we talked about resilience. And I know that's one of the headings for tonight. We talked about resilience, and we talked about, and the conclusion that I came to when I left was one of the best ways for young people to find resilience is through, in a sporting context, is defeat. So what I did since that, I've beaten them 4 or 5 times. 2 boys are still out there now. What time is it now? It's 8:30. I can still hear the ball banging off, because when I play them tomorrow, they want to win. I haven't decided yet whether it's time to let them back in the game or not. But is the only place that we can get resilience from defeat?
That's a difficult one. I suppose it's trying to find the balance. I think obviously, like anything, if success comes too easily, you probably don't value it as much as if you've had to really work for it. So yeah, for me, like even just as I say with club and stuff, you know, the fact that it went so long without winning something, when I won it, it was valuable. I suppose I'd like to have won it without having to go through all that, but I suppose, as they say, you know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And, you know, having to go through those difficult moments, you do have to do a lot of soul searching and reflection and, you know, improving, you know, and trying to improve yourself. I don't know how else. I suppose it's just in sport, I suppose it's not necessarily about winning and losing matches. You know, I think a lot of high level athletes or high performance athletes, their goal is to be as good as they can be and to be the best athlete they can be. So, you know, while the result's not necessarily important, you know, you can take a lot from a good performance. And I suppose for me, you know, after a defeat, I've been, you know, find it very difficult, but my biggest motivation is to try and be the best athlete and the best, like, you know, their best netballer that I can be personally, and that's always been my driving force or motivation.
No, I'm going to say that to the kids now to see if they can take any consolation from the last week or so. But Carol, there's just a question from the floor. What is the hardest workout you've ever done?
The hardest workout?
Yeah, from a boxing point of view, that must be ridiculous.
Yeah, I've done a lot of hard workouts. I think probably the hardest thing I've ever done was, well, that I can remember, I've done a lot of hard workouts, but I can remember we do, with this new team that I'm with, we do a lot of training, pre-camp kind of stuff in Tenerife, Mount Teide at altitude, and running at altitude up a mountain is no joke. If you've never done it before, it's not nice. And yeah, maybe, you know, a 5-mile run uphill with very little oxygen is it's very, very hard.
Caroline?
Yeah, my heart bleeds from doing all that training in Tenerife, I think. I think you should try training in South Armagh in January and you know all about it. Yeah, so probably pre-season long slogs, hill runs, sand dunes, all that with that bitterly cold wind coming on your face and just the pain in your hands from the coldness. You're not sure whether your legs are sore or your fingers. That's
Sorry, Caroline, what will it take for netball to get, just a question from the floor, what will it take for netball to get to the next level?
I suppose like all female sports, you know, the 2020 campaign, like that model, I suppose, is going to be the key to bringing it forward. So trying to bring it into the public eye as much as we can, trying to get as many people seeing the sport and increasing the visibility of it. You know, there's been great progress with netball and great momentum, and there's 4 players from here who are currently playing in the Super League, and you know that those games quite often are run on Sky Sports. So that's brilliant. So I think for Northern Ireland we need to try and promote, you know, that league in terms of getting people seeing the sport and realizing, you know, the potential of it and how good it is as a sport for spectators. And just increasing participation. I think Netball Northern Ireland is doing a lot of work in trying to increase sort of social netball and trying to get people back to netball in the same way as Gaelic has done that with Gaelic for Gaelic for Mothers and Others. So that's really important to get mothers back into netball, and that brings children back into the clubs as well. It's different. It's a different atmosphere in netball compared to Gaelic, where Gaelic clubs are obviously very much orientated around the community. So it's, you know, you're naturally drawn into it from birth. But netball, like my netball club's in Lisburn, so you know it's not the same. It's not the same natural draw where, you know, like, you know, if I have kids, like they're not going to naturally necessarily go to Lisburn. They might go to a different club. So they have to do a lot more work about promoting it outside of Belfast and Lisburn.
I have a question for you, Caroline, just on netball. My young girl is 9 and just loves sport. During this isolation, I've put a basketball hoop on the side of the house, and she seems to be okay, but she's not blessed with height like myself. Has there been many top quality netball players that are on the short side?
Yeah, lots. One of the players that played with me for Manchester Thunder, she's about Leanna Leota. So she's her husband's a professional rugby player, and she's a professional netball player, Kiwi, and she's 5 foot, and she's probably the best player I've ever played with. She's one, you know, top class player. So it just depends on your position. Netball has, obviously it's a great advantage if you're in the shooting circle or in the defensive circle to have height. But in the mid-court, I mean, you can certainly compensate with, you know, speed and agility and skill.
Okay, thank you.
Carl, just coming to you. We're nearly there, guys. Another 5 minutes or so. But Carl, have you thought about, I know you're a long way off retirement or anything like that, but have you thought about transition? What comes next after boxing?
Well, I have, and I think it's important to do so at this stage of my career. Whereas, you know, I don't want to just retire one day and be like, well, what do you do now? I think it's important to plan ahead, and I've been doing things. I've got a podcast on the go. Not as good as Paddy's podcast, but it's been successful enough. I've got a little boy over here making a racket and trying to annoy me again. But I've thought about what I'm going to do, and I've got ideas in my head. I want to have like a foundation. I want to get kids involved in sports. I want to get kids, you know, from underprivileged backgrounds and working class backgrounds, chances and opportunities to succeed in sport, and maybe in conjunction with education programs. So I have a load of ideas in my head, but the commentary as well is obviously something that I think is pretty easy. It's just almost like say what you see. So I feel like I'm pretty honest, and you know, if someone asks you a question and you answer it. So that's something that there are a few things anyway that I'd like to get involved in.
Yeah, Paddy, the commentary's very, very easy. It's a lot easier than coaching. That's all I'll tell you. How are you going to replace the buzz, or do you feel as if you'll need to?
I don't know. I'm not one of these. I think there's different types of people and you hear stories of people that need to replace that buzz, and they end up doing silly things and and going on drinking drug binges and stuff. And I just end up one of these people. I'm very family orientated. I like to be around my kids and my wife. I don't like, I'm not like an attention seeker or anything like that. So I think I could just drift off once boxing's over and drift off into the sunset somewhere without too much worry about that.
You can always go back to Tenerife. Caroline, I know transition isn't a thing for you because you know you have, obviously you're a doctor, you have an occupation. I mean, that side of things is planned out for you. What about the buzz of sport?
Yeah, like Carl said, I suppose I suppose the competitiveness of it, and I think probably in lockdown it's highlighted how important that is to have some sort of goals. You know, and I suppose where you would find that when you're not competing at a high level, I suppose coaching or trying other sports. I don't know. I don't know yet, but I suppose it's not too far away. But I'll have to get thinking.
Coaching? Possibly.
I don't know if I have the patience for it, but I suppose it's something that maybe develop.
Well, if Kieran McGeeney can get the patience for it, then there's hope for the rest of us. Oh, really hope he's not on here. Guys, I'm just going to finish up. Listen, thanks so much for tonight. It's been very, very insightful. I hope everybody who was on tonight found it as insightful and as useful as I did. Des, if you're still there, you could maybe wrap things up for us.
Well, here, guys, I have to say, wow, I mean, my phone's going absolutely nuts in terms of with people here, just about how impressed they are with tonight. And I have to just say thank you for tonight. I suppose for my summary tonight is really just a fascinating insight into your journeys in terms of how you become two of the most mentally strong athletes, but most importantly, mentally strong people in Northern Ireland and throughout, and shows that people from Northern Ireland can actually compete on an international stage. And the one standout thing for me that ran through tonight really was the importance of having a really strong social support network. And when you're on your way up, when you're way down in defeat, not there, and I think that's, for me, that's come across so strong tonight. So thank you very much for highlighting that, and thanks very much for your time and how personable you have been tonight. So thank you on behalf of everybody here. And Oisín as well, thanks for hosting tonight, guys. We will follow up with this. We will have recorded, and we'll be able to share some of the information. But we are going to come back in 2 weeks' time with our next webinar in terms of that, and we have looking at something else again, dealing with setbacks, I suppose, in terms of when we've got Paddy Barnes, Paddy's had to leave us there, and Megan Fraser from Irish Hockey Women's Team, who will help us again to understand from their perspective the idea of resilience and well-being and dealing with setbacks. So, guys, thanks very much for your time tonight for the three guys, for Caroline and Oisín, but also very much for yourselves, guys, and all the best. And take care. Thank you. We'll be in touch. Thanks, guys.